I'll just announce Gene Dewan had a last-minute change of plans, so he won't be joining us. And Michael Singer, a retina specialist based in San Antonio, who has worked with the clinical development of many of the things that we use in our daily practices. Michael Singer will be joining us instead. I'll start the questioning with Dr. Hollekamp. Nancy, you know, most of us here go back to the very first intraocular implant, which was the Vitrasert, back in the period of the AIDS epidemic. And that was the first thing that provided long-term drug in the eye. And since then, we've seen this regimen, this armament expand. And from the talks today, we can see that there are a lot of things in the pipeline. Can I just ask, what do you envision for drug delivery over the near term, say the next 5 or 10 years? And really, my question is a whining one, is will we ever get out of this realm where we're doing frequent intravitreal injections for our patients?
Well, in this day and age, I don't think it's sufficient just to talk about a drug anymore. We have to talk about drug and drug delivery. And after 15 years, essentially, of doing injections, I think it's time to move on. And as a clinician, I'm very, very excited about what I see today and what's been happening in this field. So we can see there is an accelerated momentum toward drug delivery. And I like all the shots on goal. I like all the strategies, people looking for a competitive edge, because in the end, it makes us all better. And in the end, I think it will be better for patient care. To answer the second part of your question, will this finally get us away from frequent injections? Everyone in this room is innovative. Everyone in this room is an early adopter. I can't say that all of our colleagues are. I think that we may be taking some of our colleagues kicking and screaming away from their comfort zone. And there may even be some patients who have a comfort of, as much as they hate the injections, of seeing their retina specialist frequently and wanting to be monitored. So I think that there will be some challenges to adopting long-term drug delivery systems, but personally I'm very excited about it, and I think it's the future, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
But I'll still be doing injections in clinic, huh? Okay. You know, we've seen today there's a lot of activity, and there's a range of approaches that are being used from drug delivery to, you know, the implants like the PDS that go, are permanent implants, surgically implanted into the eye, to different formulations that we can inject into the eye that bioerode or are permanent. And then I think we should include the gene therapies in there as the next generation of drug delivery, particularly as Tom Chula showed us in conjunction with the suprachoroidal delivery system. So let me ask this one for Dr. Barticelli. Giulio, what do you see as the different capabilities of all these different tools, say that once they're all available in our hands as retina surgeons?
Sure, that's a great question. So first of all, it's amazing seeing how much new technologies we are looking at right now after all these presentations. To me, there are different kind of implants, different kind of devices out there that can provide different options for patients. At least for the devices that are approved right now and they are biodegradable, for example, the majority of them, they are just targeting inflammation, right? But there is no yet a biodegradable device that is able to target VEGF and being able to completely block it, right? So we have now implantable devices that do that. And so this is a major difference for now, but not for maybe for the futures. We have seen data that maybe we can get there over time, right? Also blocking VEGF and maybe also other pathways. So that's a major difference. The other difference to me is also, as Nancy was saying, the need for surgery, right? Between, you know, doing an injection of a biodegradable device is very different than doing a surgery for an implant, an indwelling implant. So not every patient will be willing to have a surgery. And at the same time, not every patient will be a good candidate for the surgery. So that's what, as a retina specialist, we need to be very careful for, right? And the third difference, if I can, to me, it's the reversibility of action, right? So if you inject something into the eye, eventually also as a biodegradable implant, the only way to remove it because of an adverse event is a surgery. For implantable devices, as Susvimo, for example, we have the option to flush it, right, without removing it, or you can also remove it if you want it, but you can get rid of the drug very quickly. For gene therapy, which to me is very compelling, very interesting, that there is not yet a way to stop it once you treat it. So these are all things that needs to be considered.
Well, let me take that to Mike Singer, who's a busy, active retina doctor. Now we have the Susvimo port delivery system available, a major breakthrough. We have some other things that are coming down the line. What percentage of your patients do you see making this transition from the good old intravitreal injections to some of these newer technologies, say for AMD or for diabetic retinopathy?
So, we're part of the clinical trials for the Susvimo, and we've started doing a number of them in real life. And again, different people fall into different groups. It was very well explained that essentially this is a surgery. It has surgical complications. You start putting extra steps. What do you gain? You gain the fact that you pretty much give a level order anti-VEGF over time that you're able to keep the retina dry, which is wonderful. For some patients who don't want shots, this is great. However, it's not you do it and then it's gone. You still have to monitor it. You got to make sure. We've become conjunctival glaucoma surgeons because that's where the majority of the complications happen. But for the people who have had it and it works well, they love it. They're thrilled. The other thing is, however, it is a surgery. It takes a lot of time. With the fact that with faricimab that you've got a high percentage of patients, and we're going to hear from Arshad tomorrow, even higher at year 2 in AMD, and obviously what was presented in DME, we got a lot of people that can go 4 months without an injection. This is really making it significantly more exciting, because one of our biggest problems, as we know, and Tom Chula over here has done an amazing amount of work, where we look at the fact there is an unmet need because patients over time don't get as many shots as they could, and all the vision you get, you lose it. So again, we have to balance it. I think there'll be a certain number of people that want the surgery, like one and done, that hate the shots, the actual giving the needle. That's the people we've been doing on now. But I do think for a lot of people, doing the injections is still very valuable because of the fact that now they only have to come in potentially 3 times a year to get a shot. And even though they have to come in more to be checked, I think the sub-analysis will give us a better understanding of who are our high-need players, because that's what we haven't figured out yet. We haven't been able to tell you, if I give you an anti-VEGF shot, whatever the formulation, I can't tell you how long it's going to last. We need to have better diagnostics to figure out those high-need people so we see them and treat them often. And the ones that don't need to be treated as often, they don't need to clog up our offices, because we got all this dry AMD things coming down the pike any moment.
Mike, I'll put you on the spot. Give me a number. 10% of your patients will switch over?
I think
30%?
so. I think about 15%.
15%. And is that throughout, or is that the first year as you're getting used to it?
I think it may get higher. I think it's much. I think for DME it's even a bigger thing, because that's where I've written articles on compliance.
I like 15% too for AMD. I agree with you for the DR DME population. We're only in clinical trials yet. But I just want to say that these patients are self-selected. We underestimate how much anxiety and fear some patients have with the injections. And if a patient goes this route, in my experience with Susvimo so far, they're very, very happy. So if patient preference were the driver of technology, this certainly has a role for at least 15%, if not more. But of course, patients don't often drive therapy. There are other drivers of the therapies.
All right, well, let me go off script a little bit. We talk about this being more convenient for the patients. We talk about it being more convenient for us to have drug delivery. But really, in the real world, with intravitreal injection therapies, we don't come anywhere near what we see in the clinical trials. Tom Chula has shown this over and over again. So Tom, do you see anything from these sustained delivery technologies that goes beyond just making the treatment burden less?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it becomes really interesting when you have sustained delivery, and then that could be a foundational therapy on which you could layer other therapies and really get to the point where you're treating patients almost like cancer chemotherapy patients, having different cocktails of therapies being administered. So I think there's that potential. But I do think that, at least in the short term, these drug delivery devices will have a huge impact on patient care. I think in the midterm, though, the gene therapy biofactory is potentially very appealing. And I think in the long term, there's real potential for cell therapy. I think that, we're just starting to scratch the surface of that, but both cell therapy that's supportive or trophic, and cell therapy that's regenerative.
It's very exciting that with the gene therapies that are creating these biofactories, we have two shots on goal. One with the subretinal delivery, such as Regenx Bio, where the drug is put right at the target tissue to transfect those RPE cells and photoreceptors, and the other where it's potentially an office procedure with the Clearside technology to perform the same transfection. That's optimistic, Michael.
So it's interesting. One of the things that Tom said, and I don't think it's really appreciated, maybe it is, and I'm just the only one not picking up on it, is every one of our delivery systems are dual mechanism of action, right? So again, interesting. Oncology does, my friend who's diagnosed recently with cancer is given chemotherapy where he has a number of different drugs in the cocktail. Even our gene therapies, the wonderful suprachoroidal therapies, they're all given an anti-VEGF primer. So we actually are hitting it by more than one mechanism of action, which I think is much more therapeutic because the body's pretty smart. So I do think as we look at this, we're not really just giving one, even in the one that's there. We're priming these people either with a history of anti-VEGF or something else. And I think that's why we're going to have better results because we're doing, it's two shots on goal.
Thanks, Mike. I want to switch gears. We've been talking about our standard diseases, wet AMD and DME and things. Tom, can I ask you, with sustained delivery, do you see it opening doors to, make treatment of other diseases more practicable or even possible?
Absolutely. I think, a lot of the diseases we talk about now are basically asymptomatic until late in the course. So if you think about geographic atrophy, diabetic retinopathy, glaucoma, all of these diseases are essentially asymptomatic until very late. And I think it's a tough sell to have a patient come back every month for an injection. So I think sustained release is going to be super important for those three disorders: glaucoma, geoatrophy, and DR.
It'll multiply. We can't make monthly injections for wet AMD, and it's even harder for dry AMD. So this will be a multiplier to treat that much larger patient population. Let me ask, we have people that straddle the practice world and also industry. We know here that drug delivery is going to provide value for our patients. What are the payers? What are the authorizations? How are they going to value these devices? Giulio, you already have some experience with this.
Yeah, happy to talk about that. So the big problem is that there is a disconnection here between the perspective of the payers and the perspective of physician and patients. Physician and patient love sustained delivery, as you said, many patients at least, because they free them up from repeated intravitreal injections, right? So the disease burden, the treatment burden for them is a huge benefit. It is not for the payers, but the payers is a convenience. They see it as a convenience. And so as physician, I think physician advocacy here will be very critical to make the payers understand not only what this innovation can bring to the market, but also what that means for patients. So unless we change their mindset altogether, eventually it will be very difficult for the next sustained delivery systems coming out to eventually get to the market.
Well, as Tom has said, it's convenience, but in the real world, we're providing a continuous level of the drug and we're going to improve outcomes. So we need some studies that show that value that's added by sustained delivery. It's one thing in a clinical trial where the control arm is getting monthly Lucentis, which never happens in the real world, never. It's another thing when it's in the real world, and Tom has shown patients are really getting 5 or 6 injections a year, and they're slowly going blind on us. Nancy?
So the promise of sustained delivery is that it will deliver better real-world outcomes. We have yet to prove that promise. And I think as soon as we do, then we will have a cogent argument for the payers. But I can tell you that as a clinician who employs sustained delivery, in clinical trials and now even in practice, the office visits are really easy because everybody looks good. And you have some kind of confidence that they are under continual treatment. So Tom mentioned the word foundational, that it's a foundational treatment. But in the gene therapy patients that I've treated, in the PDS and Susvimo patients that I've treated, it's a whole different mindset for the clinician that this person's disease is getting continual treatment. And I think that that has some benefit to the patients, and if we can prove it, the patient's outcomes.
We'll give Nancy the last word there, and we'll stay almost on time. Thanks very much.